lot of proposals around on the ballots that are labor related, some labor friendly, and some of those I'd like to touch on. Cliff, I hopefully have something to say about this here. In Michigan, Prop 2 has been a big talking point in the media lately. It's on a lot of people's minds, a lot of signs on lawns here. Can you tell us a little bit about Proposal 2 and what that would mean for us as a state?
Well, here in Michigan, Prop 2 is a big deal because if you think about it, it's a fundamental change in the way things have been going lately nationally. You see other states, including Indiana, go to a right-to-work state. Here in Michigan, there have been a number of legislative actions that have tried to curtail the financial difficulties I think Michael was talking about that they're having in California. And public employers across the state of Michigan are faced with the same realities everybody else has. So when you're getting pushed back, essentially the unions have to do one of two things. They either have to take it or they got to fight back and go for the home run. And that's essentially what Prop 2 is. It's the home run. It essentially says we're going to amend the Constitution of Michigan so that people have the right to bargain, which seems like a pretty novel idea for the 1930s, not for in the 2012. But what it really means is there's going to be a law on the books that says that you as a legislature, the people of the state of Michigan cannot, either on the state or the local level, pass any law that conflicts with a collectively bargained agreement. So if you've got a contract, you can't in any way stop the rights of that contract by legislation. Now, on its face, it seems, well, that seems fair. But in reality, well, let's think about some of the things that would be implicated by this. There's an estimate of about 170 laws currently on the books that will be gone, or at least in jeopardy of being gone. It's a lot of laws. Which ones? We're not even sure yet, because the law is so broad, so vague. I mean, anything that's not just in the contract, what about a past practice? What about a practice that's been accreted to a contract? So every contract could have a different rule that invalidates a particular law, and that's a problem. The second thing, obviously, is you've got some legislations. Here in Michigan, you've got a Republican governor. You've got both houses of our legislature are controlled by Republicans, and they wouldn't mind making this a right-to-work state. The governor hasn't really said it's something that's on his agenda, but if he wanted it, it's pretty sure it can go up there. That can't happen under a constitutional amendment because, obviously, you wouldn't have dues coming out. And so this is really about protecting the lifeblood of having dues so you won't have a right-to-work state. But more importantly, Michigan has enacted a couple legislative proposals, which we'll probably talk about a little bit more, but including they revolutionized the Teacher Tenure Act here in Michigan. They pretty much changed that to get rid of the job for life status. That was done legislatively. This right to work, this turnover of this Teacher Tenure Act, as well as a change in how public employers in Michigan generally can't strike. So essentially they have certain types of other rights, which is bargaining. And what the public sector unions a lot of times will do historically is they just use time. They use time and public pressure to get a better contract. They set up contracts that have step increases. So even if you don't have a new contract, you get a raise every year anyway. And if your public employer is trying to cut your health care, well, you're not in a rush to get that contract signed for the cut in your health care. Well, under the new law that was signed here in Michigan, just recently, just last summer, what happens is when your contract expires, even if you want to extend it, if it expires by its own dates, once that happens, you don't get any step increases. And if there's any increase in insurance premiums after that date, there is an authorization for the employer to take the money, the difference between the premiums that are going to be required for health care, be taken out of your check. There's no more time. Time is now flipped legislatively. Now, this Prop 2 would stop that. And that has been one of the major focuses in negotiations that I've been involved in public sector in the last 8 months since that's gone into effect, is that you've had this practice of political pressure, and now you've got this new law. This law will change that back. You've got public school teachers, you've got firefighters, you've got policemen, you've got other AFSCME represented groups and other groups out there. They are very strong, very politically connected. However, they are seeing all their rights taken away little by little, and Prop 2 will fundamentally change how things get done. You can't pass laws. So you put you in a fiscal situation. What do you do about pensions? What do you do about health care? Well, this is going to really have a strong impact for the future because it's a constitutional amendment. It's going to be extremely difficult to get from underneath of.
You know, Cliff, that the driving force behind Prop 2 has been the UAW, Bob King. And what really surprises me is the little amount of information that we hear explaining exactly what Prop 2 is. I mean, we're hearing, the forces that are supporting Prop 2. We're seeing firemen on commercials and nurses, and we're seeing people on commercials promoting Proposition 2. But as to today, I have not heard one commercial or seen much information in the newspapers that are talking about, what Prop 2 really is going to mean if it passes.
Prop 2, and this is why Prop 2 is not being advertised. There is a group of people that have benefited from the Public Employees Relations Act here in the state of Michigan, publicly collective bargaining, and they have a war chest, if you will, of money. If Prop 2 doesn't pass and things continue to go the way they're going right now, that gravy train is going to end, essentially. That's why you're seeing the campaign ads in this state, at least, for one side, not the other, because the other side really is who? It's the public entities that for years have been giving the other side of the public thing. So who do you have that's going to stand up against it? The Taxpayer Association? I mean, they're not really there. There's Chamber of Commerce people. There are people that understand the concept. But in reality, this was an unbelievable deal for the unions to get this onto a constitutional ballot, because you don't know what you're signing. And Rick has said out here, I mean, you've seen commercials, and it has nothing to do with what we're talking about. They'll have people on the auto line here in Michigan, and they'll say, collective bargaining is what made my life. Well, that's great, but that's not what this is about. This is about right to work. This is about Tenure Act. This is about not being allowed to change and keep things solvent, essentially, and be able to do anything through the legislature, taking away the Republican form of government and putting it back in the hands of public unions.
Well, right, and that's why every commercial that you see is designed to create an emotional response. Is that this person that's on the commercial is my neighbor, is my friend, is my brother, is my sister. So those are the most effective ads, and I think that's why we're seeing at least polling in Michigan here for Proposition 2. It looks like it has a good chance of passing.
Michael,
I think that that Prop 2 discussion that I've been listening to is fascinating and frightening. And it's amazing to me that something this far-reaching is not getting national attention, or a lot more national attention. There was something, I think, in the Wall Street Journal the other day, and maybe you could comment on this, that in addition to Prop 2, is it accurate that labor in Michigan also has a challenge focused on some of the candidates for your Supreme Court positions that are open? So that not only would they have the Prop 2 in place, but they would also have a court that would be very amenable to the arguments to try to eliminate these 170-odd laws.
No, you're right. You're 100% correct on that. They're really supporting the candidates that have, at least to this date, have shown that they would be favorable for changing the way the laws are done, or at least enforcing them the way they want them to be done. So you got a two-sided effect. You're going to get me on one way or get me on the other. And if not, if they get both of those initiatives in there, it's going to be difficult to do business in Michigan in the public sector without dealing with the unions. And that's it.
And I think that goes hand in hand. I mean, you see the money that they're spending promoting, different state Supreme Court judges also. So yeah, it goes hand in hand. They have to have that firewall.
Well, Michael,
I have heard that if Prop 2 is successful, that perhaps the next target for something like that is Nevada, because I believe this is accurate that the right to work is not a constitutional provision in Nevada, and there's been at least an argument that if you have a constitutional right to collective bargaining, that could invalidate a statutory right under 14B to have a right to work state. So this is something that I think has incredible implications for the country.
Well, yeah, Michael, I agree with you, and I think whether it passes or not, this is the type of action that we're going to start seeing more and more in the future.
What's related to Prop 2? Prop 2 is something that is a fundamental change in the way that you do business. I don't think there's any other way to look at this as being night and day difference. But also on the ballot out here in Michigan is Prop 1, which isn't getting a whole lot. Now, while for whatever reason it's not getting a lot of pro and it's not getting a lot of con, but essentially in Michigan there was a law called the Emergency Financial Manager Law. it was another way to address some problems. And essentially, the governor could appoint under certain circumstances emergency financial manager. They come in, they take over your city, and they have the right to change, modify, or completely eliminate collective bargaining agreements in public sector employers. Now, that's a major deal. Now, of course, there were some technical challenges to that, not based on the law itself, but in how it was enacted. And so now that's on the ballot as well, whether they can do that or not. And if Prop 1 passes and the emergency financial manager can come in for a large city, a large county, or some municipality and can do that, the question is going to be, okay, but what if Prop 2 gets in? So now you're going to have two constitutional amendments that essentially look like they void each other out, because on one hand, how are you going to have a contract that has rights in place, and then you got this financial manager who is going to be acting as if he's a city going against that contract? So now you have legal battles and no clarity.
And then that's when we come back again to to the election of the judges, of the Supreme Court judges for Michigan, and how they're going to back the propositions that are proposed or favored by the unions.
Michael, Michigan's not alone in those labor-friendly proposals, or labor-related proposals anyway. California's Proposal 32, the Paycheck Protection Initiative, would ban corporate and union contributions to state and local candidates, as well as ban contributions by government contractors to the politicians who control those contracts, and bans automatic deductions by corporations, unions, and government of employees' wages for political use. Now, we all know, I'm sure, familiar with the SEIU lawsuit that was filed and that was, dealt with, I think, since 2007 that's been going on, and was recently ruled that the SEIU was defeated in that case. They were automatically deducting wages from some of their employees' paychecks explicitly for political purposes. Now, do you think that Paycheck Protection Initiative, the Paycheck Protection Proposal, do you think that'll have a real impact if that gets passed?
I think Proposition 32 is enormously important, and another one of these bellwether indicators is just how much power unions have. We were talking a few minutes ago about the emotional attachment of these ads, and it reminded me as I was driving in this morning and almost went over the Golden Gate Bridge, because I was advised that the people that are behind Proposition 32 are George Bush, Karl Rove, the Koch brothers, and all of these individuals that just want to have more rights at the expense of the little person. I don't believe that that's accurate. I do know that organized labor so far has put $66 million into defeating Proposition 32. And I find it somewhat ironic that the $66 million have come from the paychecks of individuals who probably have no idea that $66 million is their dues money, which is being utilized in order to try to convince everybody not to support a proposition that would mandate that before a union can utilize dues money for political purposes, they first have to get permission from the person who's giving them the money as to whether or not they do or do not support that particular political position or that particular candidate. Right now, in the polls out here, I don't know how reliable they are, but the one that I saw the other day, this appears to be about dead even at 42-42, with a lot of people that are undecided, and there are certainly now TV ads and the like that are coming out that are encouraging people to vote yes on Prop 32. So this is a big deal. Because California, I quipped that it's the Union of California. California is controlled by essentially three entities: the SEIU, the prison guards, and the California teachers, which recently have been rated as the sixth most powerful teachers union in the country. I was surprised that it was only sixth. And if they defeat Proposition 32, then you're just going to see more and more and more of this type of activity, and it relates to the pension situation and the general approach that California politics have taken, which is you can't do anything because essentially those three unions have a veto right against anything that anybody in the legislature wants to do, and it's very, very, very frustrating. And it's something that I think is not only important, quite frankly, to the future of California, but again, to the way the country views unions.
Hey, Michael, what position has the Governor Brown taken on this proposal?
Well, of course, Governor Brown, he, under a semblance that there was quote unquote pension reform, which is a topic not of a podcast but of a whole webinar, that created the predicate so that increased taxes under Proposition 30 should be supported. We're only going to have a quote unquote, I'm delighted to hear this, it's only going to be a temporary tax increase on the wealthy, but it's only for 7 years, and then of course it'll expire. Sure. So in return, of course, for the support on Proposition 30, he obviously is supportive of the defeat of Proposition 32.